Is it advisable to change your spouse according to your liking? Hi, friends. Welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about the sensitive topic of whether it is advisable to change your spouse according to your liking. Most of you want to change your spouse according to your liking, don't you? Do you know trying to change your spouse according to your liking is the root cause to many of your relationship issues? Here is why. Your spouse is an individual with his or her own unique traits, and your spouse likes him or her the way he or she is. So, when you try to change your spouse according to your liking, the individuality in him or her revolts against it. Your spouse finds it near impossible to change his or her characteristics to accommodate your liking. Trying to change your spouse is very dangerous to your marriage. Unless you accept your spouse as he or she is, you cannot enjoy your relationship. Yes, accepting your spouse as he or she is the simplest way to a successful married life. Auntie, I didn't like the way my husband dresses himself. When I made suggestions to my husband to change his way of dressing, he flared up in anger against me. He furiously told me not to intrude into his way of dressing. My niece was complaining to me about her husband. What would you do if your husband made any suggestions to you to change yourself? I asked my niece with a smile. I wouldn't like it, Auntie. Why should I change myself? My niece looked angry at the suggestion of changing herself. See how angry you are at the suggestion of changing yourself? What is to you is to your husband also. Do not intrude too much into the personal zone of your husband. He will not like it, I smiled at my niece. Can you see how my niece did not like the suggestion of changing herself? It is sad that she did not realize that her husband would also feel the same when she wanted him to change according to her liking. Do you know that trying to change your spouse to your way of thinking and liking sows the first seed of discontentment in your married life? As an individual, you have your own likes and dislikes. You have many individualistic characteristics. These characteristics are trademark of your individuality, and you like your individuality as it defines you. This is the reason you do not like changing yourself for anyone. It is the same with your spouse. Your spouse also wants to retain his or her individuality even after marrying you. Though both want to retain your individuality, it is strange that both try to change each other. Did you change yourself according to the liking of your parents? You revolted when your parents tried to mold you according to their way of thinking, didn't you? You knew that your parents meant good for you, but in spite of it, you hated the attitude of thrusting their views on you. Do you know why? It is because you felt it was against your individuality. It is basic human nature to feel that you have the right to live your life the way you want to. The same applies to your spouse also. How can you expect to change your spouse just because he or she is married to you? My spouse was willing to change according to my liking when we were dating. But after marriage, he or she refuses to listen to me, a common complaint most of you have about your spouse. Why does your spouse listen to you during your dating days? It is because of the impact of the initial glow of his or her love for you. During your love days, everything about you is new and exciting to your spouse. So, your spouse forgets his or her individuality for the time being, just to please you, This pliable attitude of your spouse makes you feel smug that you can change him or her according to your liking after marriage also. Naturally, you're disappointed when after marriage, your spouse is unwilling to change according to your liking. You're nonplussed when there is a volte-face in the attitude of your spouse after marriage. You're literally dumbfounded when your spouse resents your advice to change according to your liking. There are a lot of arguments and fights between you regarding the changes you want from your spouse. What are the common changes you want from your spouse? You feel your spouse has bad dress sense. So you try to change the way of dressing of your spouse. When you try to change the way of dressing of your spouse, he or she hates it. So you should not intrude into this very personal zone of your spouse. Yet another way you try to change your spouse is giving suggestions to him or her about his or her way of doing things. Understandably, your spouse never accepts any of your suggestions as he or she feels he or she is good enough. If you are a fitness freak, you also interfere into the diet of your spouse. You also want to take control of what your spouse does in his or her free time. Many a time you compel your spouse to change his or her friend's circle. How wrong can you be in even considering to change the individualistic traits of your spouse? Do you know what happens when you try to change your spouse? When you force your spouse to change according to your mindset, it makes him or her rear back in revolt. Your intruding nature makes your spouse feel that you're being bossy and dominating. This is the worst relationship blunder you can ever commit. Never marry in the hope of changing your spouse. It never happens. The best relationship advice for you is to accept your spouse for what he or she is. You feel angered by the suggestion that you should accept your spouse as he or she is. You can change your spouse according to your liking, not by your preachy words, but by your appreciation. Are you wondering how? When your voice is condescending and patronizing when you advise your spouse to change his or her characteristics, he or she will not listen to you. But when you are appreciative and encouraging, your spouse feels that you really care for him or her. When you're constructive in your suggestions, your spouse will gradually become more adaptable to your way of thinking. So, everything depends on the way you interact with your spouse and not on your advising words. Your reasonable hints and appreciative reactions makes your spouse feel that your suggestions for change stems from your true care. Appreciation and encouragement are the only ways to change your spouse according to your liking. Did this video make you understand why you should never change your spouse according to your liking? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.